In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this little bodysuit. I drafted this pattern to be as simple as possible. So the front is just the one piece band, and then the cups, the bra cups are very simple, just one seam, and I didn't make it I didn't make the seam here, so it's just to make it more simple to sew for beginners. And the back is just the two pieces, and the back I made it so it buttons. You can put snaps here, or you can put eyelets and do lace. And on the online version, I just did a facing along the top, and for the bottom, I just serged and then folded over the hem, and sewed it to look decorative. And for the embellishments, top stitching. So I'm gonna make it out of this fabric, and I'm gonna make the lined version. So, and this is gonna be for the overlay. The first step is to print out your pattern at 100%, test that it's the correct size, and then cut out your pattern pieces. I'm using the same fabric as the main fabric for the lining, so I cut 2 pieces of the front, 4 pieces of the cup seam and the top cup seam, and 4 pieces of the back. I also cut 2 of the overlay and 1 for the front overlay. And I've also marked my pattern pieces. I'll attach the overlay. So I'm gonna stitch it at the very corner. Stitch this part down. And then I will add some lace on both sides. So I went ahead and put the front piece, and I also did a little lace. I used a gimp trim in this case on the sides. You don't have to do it around here, because now I'm going to use the same lace, and you can use ruffle lace or whatever your preference is. And this fabric is see-through, so I'm going to go ahead and trace my line where my lace is going to be. So then we're going to go ahead and stitch that on there. Now I'm sewing the cup, and for the front I just placed the overlay on each cup piece. Make sure you have them facing the right direction, the front to the front. And then I'm going to make sure all my edges match. And you can base this overlay on there first to make it easy. So once you've pinned your cuff together, you're going to sew a seam right here, right along this edge. And do the same thing for the other side. And if you're doing a facing, you can do the same things for the facing, except that you don't need to do the overlay. After putting the cuffs together, I did the facing ones as well, but put those to the sides. You're gonna trim, and I did a stay stitch on the bust part here, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a top stitch along this seam, and with the seam facing up. That top seam makes the cuff nice and round. I pinned and then I basted the cups. I'm going to take my pins out, and at the sewing machine I will sew it from this side, placing the flat side of the cuff down, and sew it like at a 1/4 inch seam, like that. I sewed my cups on, and right now what I'll do is to give it a little support and a little form. I'm also going to do a top stitch very close to the edge, catching the seam. And then after I do my top stitch, I'll trim the seam. And that's very, very easy. You just make your fabric flat like that and sew along that, close to the seam. Now that I did the top stitch along the bottom edge of the cuffs, I'm going to trim the seam very close to the top stitching. So that's what it's going to look like. And this is where the underwire would be if you were doing a full-size garment. Now at this point, if you're not doing a lining, you would attach the bottom and the sides. But because I'm doing the lining, I'm going to go ahead and finish my lining and start the process of applying the lining, because I want to do the lining so that there's no seams visible on the inside or the outside. The front of the main piece is done, and I also completed the facing part. So I'm going to put that to the side. And next is the back. So right sides facing each other. We're going to sew from here at the back. Once you have your back sewn, clip at the edge without cutting into the stitches, and trim the part that you just sewed. And if you were making this without a lining, you would be serging these finishes. If you had a fabric that frayed. With this fabric, I wouldn't even bother serging. Because it doesn't fray. So this is the lining. I'm going to put that to the side, and I'm going to put together the bottom at the crotch seam, right sides facing each other, and we're going to sew that seam. So I'm going to do the same thing for the lining. We have our crotch attached. I'm going to trim the seam. If you weren't doing a lining, you would sew and serge this. But since we're doing a lining now, I'm going to attach the lining at the leg parts. So we're going to sew here and here. I'm trimming the seams. Now this is important. I'm going to turn this inside out through the crotch seam. And you have to do this step before doing the other steps. Now that it's turned on the bottom, the right side out, maybe give it a little press so the seams stays nice and flat. And now what we're going to do is turn the right sides facing each other from the facing. And we're going to pin it and sew all the way down to the right side of the fabric. So we're closing our sides. Just make sure you match your seams carefully at the sides. And sew the seam like that. And do the same thing for the other side. So we're going to sew the seam like this and like this, both sides. Once your top seam is done, we're just going to turn this inside out again through the back opening. The final step is to fold the seam in for the back towards the inside, 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to fold it in like this, evenly. And then I'm going to make a stitch to close it, and do that on both sides. And once that's done, all you have to do is attach snaps or buttons or hook and loop tape, whatever way you want to close the bodysuit. And if you're making your bodysuit out of fabric like this, make sure that you don't leave any thread tails on the in between fabrics, because then you won't be able to take them out. So that's how you sew the bustier. And if you were sewing it without a facing, it's really simple. You assemble the front the same way that we assemble the front on this one, and then cut a bias strip about a little bit over half an inch, and serge it, and then make a facing for the top, along the top. And then I flipped it around so that it's nice there, and I serge the back and just hem it. And for the bottom, you're gonna close this first and this first, and then serge your edges, and then hem them up about 1/4 of an inch as well. And I hem them up with just a machine stitch. And these are just a sample of fabrics that you can use. You can use any fabric. The best fabric though is something like this one. Doesn't have a lot of stretch, but just as long as it has a little bit of stretch, because there's no darts, there's nothing in the front. It's just a front piece and 2 back pieces, and so to make it as simple as possible to sew. So I'm going to do eyelets on this because this fabric barely stretches, and this is a pretty tight fit. So I'm using this sheer tape. I don't know what it's called because I got rid of the packaging, and I'm making it a double so I can put eyelets in and do the closing with eyelets and lace. And this is just to give the fabric some support, because this is sheer, but it's pretty strong. When I'm making the eyelets, I just match the 2 sides together so that the holes are even. And I'm going to use this to make the holes through both layers. And put my eyelets through all the layers. And you can make your eyelets by machine. I know sometimes the machines have buttonholes, And they have the option to do an eyelet buttonhole. I have these. They're tiny. I bought them a long time ago. Making memories. I don't even know if they make them anymore. And I have to do this on the floor. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this little bodysuit, bra, whatever you want to call it. I made this one out of a fabric that barely stretches. Actually, it doesn't stretch. So it's a little, it's not as body fitted. I don't know, it's a little bit harder for it to look smooth. But it didn't come out too bad. So for the closures, I did eyelets and lace so that there's an opening for the stand. And I made some straps so that the cups don't fall down. And this will also fit with the medium bust. This was my original doll that I bought with the medium bust. So, and this version is a lined version. And then I made another version that this pattern is, you know, you can embellish it any way you want. This one I made it without any lace. I just did the embellishments as top stitching. And as you can see, this is just one piece, and then the cups and the back is just the two sides. And I did this one without the lining, so I just did a facing along the top. I just cut a piece of fabric on the bias and attached it. And then for the legs, the hem, I just hemmed them up. And this fabric stretches pretty good, so it's got a really nice fit. I'm just gonna add some snaps, maybe, or maybe I'll just do it with lace. Well, maybe because it's denim, I'm just gonna do it with snaps. And this is another version that I did. This was the very first one that I made. Not a great fabric choice because I have a hard time sewing these sequins. I don't know, it just looks a little messy because I didn't take the time to remove the sequins where I'm doing the stitching. But it's not bad. This one's also a fully lined version. And you can embellish any way you want. You can also, like if you just want to make a bustier, you can cut this part off and make it into just a bustier. But of all of them, this is my favorite. And if you're gonna make it, this fabric doesn't stretch at all. I should have gotten stretch fabric, but it's not too bad.